I'm Deirdre Maloney. I'm the co-founder of Capsule Show, which is right outside this door. I launched that in 2007 with 2 other women. And in 2004, the 3 of us started a branding agency, which we continue to do today. So I myself am a founder, and I'm really excited to be sitting next to these guys. And I'd love you guys to give them your sort of like 30-second elevator pitch about your brand and what you guys do.
Want me to go first?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Emma. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Wildfang. If you don't have an Irish accent, that probably sounds more like Wildfang. We're the home for badass women. So Wildfang is kind of fueled by 2 things. From a product perspective, we're menswear inspired, so we steal styles from the boys, call ourselves female Robin Hoods. And from an attitudinal perspective, from a brand positioning standpoint, we're activists. We're fueled by women's empowerment and gender equality, and that's pretty much why we exist.
Hey, I'm Coco.
And I'm Breezy, and we're the co-founders of Coco and Breezy.
We do eyewear, we do sunglasses, and recently just launched our optical line. We're super excited about it. And we also DJ, but we believe in building culture within a product. And culture and community is first, and the product is second.
Peter Kim. I've been around for a fairly long time because I'm old, but I started in missy moderate career polyester blouses, if you can believe this. And then from there I transitioned and started a company called Drunken Monkey, streetwear company, back in 2000. Launched Hudson jeans in 2002, so it was a fairly early time. Ended up selling Drunken Monkey, went through 3 transactions with Hudson, still with the company, still at the front of it. And most recently started a new company called Golden Circle Group. And well, one of the things that we do right now is e-sporting, which is video games and so forth. So we partnered up with one of the largest sporting teams out there to build out their apparel, their brand, and so forth. And I also am a big believer in culture and foundation and purpose. We were just sharing actually earlier, it's like, we started this new company, we had it there for like 4 months and had no idea what we're gonna do. We knew exactly why we're doing it, and what we're trying to accomplish, but had no idea what business was gonna be launched, and things just kind of happened, so.
Okay, great. So let's talk about sort of what fueled each of you on your launching of your brand and creating of the brand. Like, what was the impetus behind starting, let's start with you guys this time, Coco and Breezy.
The way that we actually started was a life experience. We grew up in Minnesota, where it was the suburbs, and our parents really allowed us to be ourselves. And so as kids in high school, we got bullied, and that's how we found our love for eyewear. So eyewear for us used to be a shield of protection, and it gave us this level of confidence. So we were these young, broken girls that we would wear eyewear for confidence. But then we realized, back in the MySpace days, y'all know about those days, we kind of built this personality from like 15 until 18 of just being ourselves. And we're building brand equity, and we're building a culture without even realizing that we're building a product. And so we were making these sunglasses for ourselves, and we started to get a demand of people wanting them. So we were doing DIY frames, and then we realized that we can actually start a real company. And after that, the rest was history. But it started off with an experience. I think that when you have an idea, you have to take your own personal experiences, and because consumers want transparency, if they can relate to a story, then the consumers would actually buy into the story before the product.
Peter?
Can you repeat the question again?
Yes, what was the impetus for starting whichever one of your companies you want to talk about?
I'd say...
Maybe Hudson Jeans, right? Because that's the one everybody
knows. For me, I started Hudson Jeans back in 2002, and it was super early in the premium denim cycle. And what I loved about the whole category of premium denim is that it's a complete oxymoron, right? It was, denim is supposed to be workwear. It's supposed to be, blue collar, low class, bottom, and now it's become, high fashion and acceptable. So, my whole thing in general life is, I want to tear down the whole system. I, challenge the status quo, tear it all down, break it all down, fuck everybody. So to me, it was like the premium denim was the ultimate symbol of, just telling people to fuck off because, you couldn't wear jeans before into a bank meeting or a business meeting, and now it's every day. And the fact that as commonplace as denim is today, and as acceptable as it is, it's still, you still have that irreverence in it. So, you know, I love showing up to places, and not to be disrespectful, or maybe in some cases, yes, to be disrespectful, but, you know, I love going into weddings or important meetings wearing jeans and just be like, and they look at you, and at a certain point, they just go, oh, okay, well, okay, fuck it. We'll just let them go with it, so.
Yeah, Emma.
I was at Nike. I was like, a little bit different. I was definitely not going to start a business. My family business back home in Ireland was retail, so I was like, the last fucking thing I will ever do with my life is start a retail business, because that's like the stupidest thing you can do. So with that in mind, I was at Nike. I had a great job. At the time, I was working with Cristiano Ronaldo. I loved my gig. I was working on the hottest part of the Nike brand, which was football. And my best friend had this idea. We were shopping one day, and we ended up in the men's department. And I never really thought I'd had a hard time finding product, but just all of a sudden it was like, oh wow, you literally can't get a great women's blazer. Like they flare out at the bottom, they have no detailing, there's no custom lining. You can't get a great wingtip. You can't, like, there was just all the graphic tees were like soft and flowery and crap. And all the cool tees were in the men's department, right? Like the one with Kate Moss, half naked with a middle finger, was in the men's department, but it had a high crew neck and no room in the hips, right? So the idea kind of hit me, and I didn't want it. And I said, hey, I'll help you however I can. You're my best friend, but I am not starting a retail company. And so I spent a year of my life in 2011 doing consumer insight work. I interviewed 44 women in their homes for 4 hours each. And the insights were so clear and so obvious that this brand needed to exist. I was like, fuck it, it may as well be me that does it, because it needs done right, you know? And so my story was a little different in that I definitely didn't want to do it, and then the pull was so strong and the opportunity was so massive, I just felt compelled to try and get into the space.
Can you tell me more about the 40 interviews that you did in home? Like, how did that come up?
Yeah, so I used to do a lot of consumer insights for Nike. That was like my sweet spot. A lot of qualitative insights, not quant. And it's amazing. People love to talk about themselves, like love to talk about themselves. And so, you know, for anybody in the room that does insights, the methodology was epically biased. The recruitment was biased, right? But that doesn't matter. It's so amazing to me how many founders are terrified to get in front of their consumer and terrified to just ask why. Why? Why? Because they're scared of what's going to come back. And the truth is, without that information, you can't make a great product and you can't create a great service. And so basically what I did was I found 5 people that I thought might sort of resonate with the idea. And I went through their wardrobe. What do they wear? What do they not wear? What's missing? Why? What's their most expensive piece? What's their least expensive piece? What do they buy most often? What do they never wear? Why? I went through their wardrobe. I went through their social media. Who were they following? Whose voices resonated and why? I did a bunch of like visualization exercises. You shut your eyes, you walk into a store, you're like, yes, where are you? And the answer was, there was no answer, right? And so there was this thing missing. There was all these women that wanted this product to exist, but they didn't have a place for it, and they didn't have, frankly, anything at retail where they were like, yes, that's my home. I love walking in the doors. I feel like a member of the family every time I walk through the doors. So honestly, like, I could go into the methodology, but it's really just about spending time with people. And then each of the 5 people I spent time with, I said, can you tell me 2 people that might do this with me next? And so by the time it got to the like 5th or 6th round, I didn't know any of the women. And they looked from like head to toe tomboy to epically feminine and everything in between. But the point was, I was getting insight and information. If, you know, we're talking about what it takes to be a founder. If you're going to cash in your 401k and put your life on the line to do something really brave and risky and stupid, you better make sure you got some data and insights that are fueling that, right?
Yeah, that's great. And it kind of, you know, none of us would be here if we didn't have our customers. So I'd like to segue into sort of how you guys interact with your consumers and how important that is, and the feedback that you get, and how it helps shape what you do next.
Go ahead, Breezy.
So the way that we interact with our consumers, we love to interact with our consumers, and we also love to interact with our actual customers, like our all the optical stores that sell our product. So for an example, yesterday we did a panel at Transitions, and Transitions is the biggest lens company, so we had some of the top optical shops there. So we thought it would be perfect to ask for feedback. So we asked them, like, what can we do differently for our product? And one of our biggest challenges, I would say, is sizing. So we are getting all the gems of what are the customer complaints that they're receiving, so that way we can take that feedback into our design process, because it's not about designing a product for yourself. You have to design for the consumer. Social media is a good way of having conversation and asking questions to your consumers, and they really feel like they are a part of the whole experience. And so we do utilize social media when I am designing to ask, what colors do you guys want? What shapes are you looking for? And so I think really having those conversations with your consumers is important, because if you're not designing for the consumers, who are you designing for?
Yeah, and when we see people wearing our product, we're walking down the street, I always ask them, how was your buying experience? Where did you get the product from? And sometimes I don't tell them, because some people will buy a product and not know the brand. And so I remember going up to someone and saying, oh, I love your glasses. And she was like, oh, thank you. I'm like, okay, where'd you get them from? She's like, she didn't want to tell us where she got them from because they were just too cute to share. You know, some people don't like telling people where they buy their product from and what it was. I was like, well, I'm Coco from Coco and Breezy. And then she spilled the beans. But it's really cool if you get to see people wear the product and ask them questions, ask them about their experience, ask them about the quality, find out how long they've been wearing the product, and you can get real-time feedback. And sometimes it may...
We used to have that fear, though.
Yeah, we used to have fear of reality, where we thought people were criticizing, but it's not criticizing, it just helps you grow as a company.
Peter, consumer engagement.
Hudson at this point is 16 years old, and we've been through a lot of, the whole industry, and I still love seeing people wearing the product. It gives me so much joy, and it's a really cool experience, which I guess, when you see it, it's like, oh, look, it's cool, look at that. And, I'll have my kids with me sometimes, and I'll tell them, hey, look, they're wearing Hudsons. And my kids will be like, a lot of people wear Hudsons. I'm like, yeah, but it's still super cool whenever I see them wear the stuff. But in our case, we're more of a classic wholesale company, so we have that buffer between us and the end consumer. We are, as everything's pushing towards, how do we keep developing the direct-to-consumer model, whether it's e-commerce or stores or pop-ups or whatever other formats that we have. But one of the things that we've done a lot of is a lot of different events, whether it's the big ones like the Coachellas and so forth, or we do a ton of store events where we actually go to whether it's a small specialty store like up in Buffalo, or the bigger department stores in Nordstrom's. And I kind of call that like hand-to-hand combat, like guerrilla warfare, where you go to every one of these stores and put as much face time as you possibly can, and kind of like in a band, right? You just play every gig you can possibly get. You can play until you become more and more recognizable. And it's important for us because our biggest thing that we believe in is, yeah, we make great product and the product's fantastic, but to me, the product that we're actually selling is our message and who we are and what we represent and what is our core purpose and our values, and hopefully that'll resonate with our core consumer, and we do everything we can to keep communicating those messages with our product.
I need to say it. Can I say a full circle story really fast, because you've been talking? So, believe it or not, before we started our eyewear company in 2009, we used to work at the Mall of America.
That was our last job.
That was our last job at a store called Metro Park, and we sold Hudson jeans. So
we quit that job.
We quit that job from selling your jeans to start our company, okay?
It was dope that we're
But they sold all the big denim brands.
Yeah.
So this is great that we're sitting on stage together.
Yeah.
Emma, do you want to talk about sort of how you interface with customers and?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of giving you guys anything useful, to me, it's less about the how and more about the mind shift. So my entire team knows that the consumer comes first. Like, I will literally personally reply to an email or an Instagram if it requires me to. Like, the whole team puts the consumer first, which means it might be at events, it might be on social media, it might be through customer service, it might be a trade show. Like, it's about how much priority you're going to give to consumer feedback and how often you want to hear it and how often you engage with your consumers. It's less about the channel. It's more about, like, if you're a founder out there sitting in the audience, like, when was the last time you talked to your consumer? Because it should be every day. So if it's not every day, then you've got catch up to play. So I think the thing at our company is that it could be like the most junior person on the retail floor, the most junior person in customer service. They know that a consumer having a great experience matters more than margin. It matters more than the top line. It matters more than making the sale. It just matters, you know. And people do crazy shit now for us. People send us like mystery Valentine packages. People like email us when they break up with their partner. Like, we get crazy shit now, which is only because of how much we care.
So you're their friend.
Yeah, you got to be more than a place to buy clothes, right? Yeah. The reality is, we don't really need that many more places to buy clothes, so you better form a deeper connection beyond that.
You know, as founders and entrepreneurs, we always face many challenges daily, right? But has there been a single, obstacle or a single moment that you would define as like sort of like your lowest moment as a founder? And what was sort of the teachable moment in that? Because every time we have like a setback or a failure or an obstacle or a challenge that we pull our hair out for, there's always like a, what did I learn from this moment afterwards? Peter?
For me, I'd say the biggest obstacle in my case is fear. And I experience this pretty much on a daily basis. Like, I wake up every morning and the first question I ask is, I don't even think I know what the fuck I'm doing. And I kind of live my life like this, where I just don't know shit and walk around the world like trying to absorb, trying to learn, trying to understand. And that to me has, and as a youth, it had a lot more of an impact, a negative impact on me, because I would be afraid to do a lot of things, so I wouldn't do anything. But that's that I would say that's the greatest obstacle. And at this point, I'm 47. I've been around for a while and had a lot of fun doing a lot of stuff. And I feel like I've been able to build certain things, turn things around. Have had a lot of financial success, and still, I'm afraid. I'm afraid all day long. I'm like, I genuinely don't think I know what the fuck I'm talking about. And so, to me, it's like, what I've learned through this experience is how do I use that as something that ignites. So like, it's that switch. Right when I feel that fear coming in, it's kind of like the light switch that turns on. And through my own discoveries and learnings, it's one of the things I try to share with other people, which is, I think we're all afraid. I think we're all scared shitless. And I do yoga fairly often, and we sit there and laugh about it because it's like 5:30 in the morning, and we sit and laugh going, I was driving up, my yoga teacher's like, I'm just driving over here, and I just realized nobody knows what the fuck they're talking about. And, it's something that I share quite often, because it's really helped me a lot to just motivate me that when I feel it, instead of shying away and being afraid of it, just lean right into it and say, hey, you know what? I think we're all fucked up, we're all scared, we all have our issues, but I think as an entrepreneur, just keep punching through that and going through it. And I guess the start of that comes from just having passion for what you're doing, because I think once you have that, the whole fear part gets a little bit less, becomes more of a positive influence as opposed to something that debilitates you.
That's great.
I have a particular moment where it was like one of our lowest times, and we had to pivot. And so when we first started our company, we were really young, so I would say the first couple of years was just like street college. And we hit a certain low point where our money was going down, our ideas weren't being received how we wanted them to be received. We were doing the DIY glasses. And I remember one time, it was my first time being in New York and being like, how are you about to eat next month? And Coco and I both had to step back and say, what are we really doing? What is our ultimate goal? I think we were spending so much time on things that weren't gearing towards our ultimate mission and our goal. And so we stepped back. I remember us being in our living room at the time when we were working from home. We just got a new office in Chelsea, but we were working from home in our little living room, and we wrote down a whole list, and we said, these things, this is why I write down a to-do list and goals, and what are our longevity goals? What are our money-making goals? What are our short-term goals? And what are the things that we're wasting time on? And I think that once we actually step back, we realize a huge success the next month. But it was like this mindset that we actually had to switch. And so I'm really thankful for that time. And we always get the question, like, has there ever been a time in your life where you wanted to give up? And that could have been a time that we could have gave up. I didn't have that mindset because I'm a big believer that when you go through your ups and your downs, you have to kind of use that down period to kind of step back and figure out what's next. And so that was definitely a pivotal time in our business, even in our personal lives. We had to like kind of grow as women because you have to grow yourself if you're trying to grow a business. And so I'm really thankful for that time. So if you guys ever go through any ups and downs, kind of step back and reflect and figure out what are you spending your time with.
And something I'm a firm believer of as well is that we weren't doing self-care, and self-care really helps. And before we were like, we were right on Twitter, team no sleep. I was up for 18 hours, working 24 hours yesterday, and and I did this and that. But once I changed my life, I get at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep. I eat healthy. I go to the gym. I do yoga. I meditate, and I work way smarter, and I don't work hard. Yeah. So you have to work smart and not work hard. And I found that I have way more free time, which I really don't have that much. But I find free time. I'm in a whole relationship, and I find time for him too, which I don't know how. But like before in the past, I probably wouldn't have time. But now that I work smarter and not harder,
spending time on things that actually go with your ultimate goal, you see your productivity grows tremendously.
Yeah, that's really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you said that question, there was like a flood of things that rushed into my mind, which is like depressing but true. It was like a flood of oh shit moments. I was like, oh, that one's worse than that one. So I guess the one that I think might top the pile is we raised some money about a year ago, but we started that raise actually a year and a half ago. Our metrics look great, lifetime value, CAC, retention, all the stuff you want to see in a business model look great. This was like Q4 of 2016. And I had 2 big VCs that both basically said, like, we're going to write your check, terms will come in January, have a nice Christmas. So I was like, woohoo, Christmas, yeah, I'm going to take that time off. And I waited for this proposal to come with the terms of the deal. And then what happened was Nasty Gal went under, ModCloth sold for a horrible exit, and Kitten Ace shut, I think, 50 doors across the world. And suddenly no one returned my call. Everybody was like, I'm not investing in retail. And I was like, but we're different. Our numbers are great. And they were like, I don't care. And so I had this horrible moment in Q1 where I was running out of money, and I was like, oh shit, I need to change my forecast, my planning, my budget, everything that I've set out for a raise plan. I need to raise from different people a different amount of money. And I got that plan together in a real rush, and I was 24 hours away from closing the deal. And the way it works is your lead investor comes in last. So your lead investor says, I'll lead the round as long as you fill up the rest of the round. And the other thing that's important when you raise money is you don't want to raise too much because it's dilutive capital, right? So you're giving away a part of your company. And so basically we were trying to do a couple of $1 million round, and I was about 250,000 oversubscribed for the round, and that was kind of as much money as I wanted to raise because I didn't want to dilute myself and the employees. 24 hours before deadline, 24 hours before everybody's meant to sign the papers, I was actually at my friend's funeral in Brooklyn. She's 40 and she died from a brain tumor, and I was at her funeral and I got a call I didn't get a call, I got an email from one of the VCs in the round who were in for 500,000. I had an email, I had phone calls, I had paper trails that said, we're in, and they backed out 24 hours before the deal. So I went from being 250,000 oversubscribed to 250 undersubscribed with 24 hours to figure it out. Otherwise, I lose my lead because it does not give a lead confidence that people start to drop out right before the deadline. So I have 24 people that work for me, and I had 24 hours to find $250,000, and that doesn't become a sales pitch anymore. You don't get time to like glossy through the deck. You're like making phone calls that say, you need to wire the money now, even though I've never pitched you before and you haven't seen my numbers. You have to trust me and believe in me, go. And that was the darkest period of my entire life. And I echo the self-care point. I did get it closed. I raised $250 in 24 hours. I never want to be in that position again. But I learned a couple of really important lessons from it. I learned about who I bet on. And I'm really careful about the people that I allow to invest in our company, whether that's time, energy, or money. You only get through the door if I really think you're going to take a bullet with me and you're in this for the right reasons. So I learned that. I learned that anytime someone shuts a door, Wildfang opens a window. There's always a way in. It might not be the front door, but there's always a way. And it fills you up as a founder with this incredible capacity. When you hit those low moments and you get out of them, you realize your capacity is actually enormous. Like the things that you can do, if you allow your brain to say, I can do this, are actually massive. And so then you start to feel not quite bulletproof, but you start to understand that no matter how bad the situation is, you can come through it. Oh, anyway, last part of the story I was going to tell you is I tried to think about how I'll never end up there again. So I went to Brooklyn that night, quite drunk, and got a diamond tattoo above my Wildfang tattoo because pressure makes diamonds, and that tattoo is a reminder for me to never, ever, ever, ever get myself into that position again.
Amazing. I love it. So I'm excited that this panel has as many people from different backgrounds as it does. And I want to talk a little bit about how being a woman or minority, or and whether that's racially or sexual orientation, has sort of affected you as an entrepreneur, and whether it's positive or negative, and what opportunities have come or maybe not come as a result of that.
I would say for us, we're women of color, and we're entrepreneurs, and we don't wear business suits. So I think that, and Breezy's queer. So I think that in the beginning, when we first started the company, we had an insecurity where we would walk into these big corporate offices, and we dressed the way we dressed. And if you guys saw how we used to look back in the day, we had blue mohawks. We came in, we had these gothic boots, like we were gothic girls, piercings all over our faces, everything. But we would walk into these rooms and speak intellectually like anyone else that was in the room. And I remember meeting with this guy, and he said he was a big CEO at this company, and I think it was like the Macy's Corporation there, and the secretary was like, they must not be here for Macy's.
No, he said, I don't think they're with Macy's.
I was like, I'm
no,
here to
meet
your boss.
Your CEO, thank you.
Yeah, and he said, don't ever change yourself. And I believe that if you walk into a room and you feel comfortable with what you have on, you're going to perform comfortably. If you walk into a room and you're not wearing something or you're not feeling the way that you want to feel, you're going to perform that way. And so...
and one thing I can say, just to echo off of you, something that we've learned, because we have a male co-founder, but Coco and I are the CEOs, co-CEOs, and we'll go into a meeting and Coco, all the decisions come, Coco and I make the decisions, but they always look at him in the eyes. And me, I'm more of the aggressive one between Coco and I, and so I'm like, over here, you can talk to me. And one thing that I can say is that if you do have a male on your team, he's really great at saying, you know what, we have two women in the room, you can look at them as well. And so I think that there's a sense of male ego, that they feel good and they want to be the ones to be spoken to. But if you are a male and you have a woman that's on your team, you have to take that, fuck that ego, and make sure that you tell your other partners that you're talking to in the meeting that, hey, there's women in the room, we all need equal attention. And that's one thing I can say that our co-founder has been really great at being team women and team us and kind of educating other people about things that aren't equal within these environments.
That's great. Peter?
I would say, interestingly enough, I've never really experienced anything from a professional perspective. I've had a lot of it personally, which I guess it's a little strange. I would have thought a little bit more. I live in a house with like 5 women, 4 women. I have twin daughters, they're 17 and a wife, and my experiences has been, I think I've had a lot of other issues that I've almost become like put blinders on. Maybe it was there, maybe it wasn't, but at the same time, my mentality is I just don't give a fuck what people think. So, you hate me, fine, I don't care. It's just like, it really doesn't matter to me. So I think that's been able to maybe protect me a little bit from myself, from getting too crazy. Because on the personal side, anybody says anything to me from a racial perspective, I have no problem stepping in their face and saying, fuck off, I will fuck you up. So I think from a business perspective, it gets a little bit more, I get so passionate about what we're doing that I just don't see that part of it. So.
Emma?
I think my biggest lesson that I've personally learned is how much privilege I have. I'm a queer immigrant. I don't sound like anybody else, and I'm a woman. So I tend to stick out in rooms, especially like investor rooms and stuff like that. But the flip side of that is, it was actually another entrepreneur in Portland who made me recognize it. He was like, you get in the room. Do you know how many people like you that don't get in the room? So when you get in the room, you need to kick the door down, and you need to let everybody that looks and sounds and acts and resembles you, allow them to come through the door behind you. So for me, every time I get a chance to speak, every time I get a chance to connect with a room like this or have a platform, I try to use it to be really real about who I am. Like, I never used to talk about my sexuality, and now it's like one of the first things I talk about, because to be honest, 99% of the audience doesn't need me, but there's probably one queer kid that does. And so that's the only person I really care about connecting with. So I've just learned to like use my platform to try and help other people that look like me come through the door behind me.
That's great. We're out of time. I have more questions, but
I know.
I'm sorry. But thank you guys all for coming here and joining us and participating.